I can assure you of one thing. There will be future Democratic presidents. There will be future Democratic Congresses. There will be future Republican presidents and future Republican Congresses. We need bipartisan support for Israel and for the needs of the Jewish community. The thing is, we can't afford to write off half the country. We need to have friends on both sides. We need to support people like John Fetterman, like Richie Torres, like Grace Meng, like Jim Gennaro, that are supportive, very supportive of Israel and of Jewish concerns. And we have to be concerned about people in the Republican Party like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who border on being anti-Semitic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Torah Talks. Today we have a very special guest, my own father, a historian, a writer, and an advisor to public officials for many years, Mr. Manny Behar, or Rabbi Manny Behar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Natan.
So tell us, how did it all start? Where did your political career begin?
Well, it started as early, you could say, as when I was 3 years old. And there was a county committeeman living in our building who used to give out balloons. And he talked about voting, and I thought it had something to do with boating. But on the first election day, I somehow knew that it had something to do with the guy who gave out the balloons. So I had an interest from a very young age, and great interest in history, and interest in history and politics often go together. But what really started it was I was in Israel during the Yom Kippur War, learning in yeshiva. And the war went very badly for Israel at the beginning. And President Nixon did an airlift of arms and ammunition to Israel that really saved the day. And that brought home something that I knew before, that the future of Israel and the very important decisions that impact on our future are made by politicians. And if we want to impact on those decisions, we have to be a part of that process. Where I really got started in YU, in 1976 presidential election, when one of the candidates was Senator Henry Scoop Jackson, who was a great friend of Israel, probably the best friend Israel ever had in the U.S. Congress. Okay. And the man who wrote the amendment that put the force of U.S. law that barred the Soviet Union from getting certain credits and favored trade status unless they allowed for free immigration. So he certainly it's the Soviet Jews themselves, people like Natan Sharansky and Yosef Metalevich, who are the main people who deserve the credit. But of people in America, he really, more than anyone else, helped to open the doors of the Soviet Union. 1976, he ran for president, and I was his student coordinator in YU. Mm-hmm. Now, given the nature of his views, I definitely had more student volunteers in YU than the rest of New York State put together. Mm-hmm. So I was the de facto youth coordinator for New York. Right. So I got very involved with that. In that campaign, I met two people who were a major influence on me that I worked with closely. One was Steve Orlau, who would go on to become a city council member. At the time, he was working in Donald Manis's office as the council. And when he became a councilman, I was his campaign manager and inherited part of his old job.
This was after you had graduated from YU?
Correct, yes.
You went into Donald Manis's office?
Yes, there was a progression to that.
Yeah, okay.
And the other was Joel Schnur, who was like a brother to me. Mm-hmm. And he was the Jewish coordinator for Scoop Jackson. And after that, I organized the Henry M. Jackson Democratic Club in YU. We campaigned for Pat Moynihan for the Senate successfully, Ed Koch for mayor. And Donald Manis was the state chairman of the Jackson for President campaign. So that's how I first became acquainted with him. And basically, I came to work and really manage Steve's campaign, and he recommended me to Donald Mattis. So that's how I wind up in Queensboro Hall.
Any other mentors or people that influenced your career early on? I think you've told me as I was growing up, you told me about Claire Schulman and all these other people.
Claire Schulman definitely was a mentor.
Yeah.
Really an example of integrity and competence. She was not a liberal. She was not a conservative. She just wanted what was good for the people. She really helped to promote responsible development in Queens, that can create jobs, but still preserving Queens as a neighborhood of family homes, not overbuilding. She was very good for Jewish organizations, very supportive of Israel. So she was certainly a great mentor. I'd also mention Liz Holtzman, who I worked for later when she was the city controller. Her major contribution was before I worked with her. She was the one who wrote the law barring Nazi war criminals from entering the United States. And a number of Nazi war criminals were deported and wound up being tried elsewhere as a result of that. So I refer to her as the woman who heard the cry of her brothers and sisters' blood. And she was, when I was there, we worked together, did research that led to the first conviction of an American company for participating in the Arab boycott of Israel. And she was also the first city controller to invest in Israel bonds.
Wow. So early on in the late 70s, 80s, when your career began, was the Jewish community heavily involved in politics back then, or was it small and growing? Like, were people, or what I'm trying to say, I guess, is were they aware that politics is something important that they should focus on so that they can ensure their security and combat anti-Semitism and other things as well?
I would say...
Or has it grown over the years since...
Okay. Certainly the 70s and the 80s were the heyday of Jewish influence in Queens.
Okay.
The people were involved, whether it was over Israel, whether it was local issues, and there was a kind of understanding. It's not that they ever sat together and reached this understanding, but there was this kind of understanding that if the Jewish community supports the candidates of the Queens Democratic Organization, that the officials of the Queens Democratic Organization would be supportive of the needs of the Jewish community. Yeah. And that's how we get the Arabs. That's how we get the building permits for shuls and yeshivas and mikvot. Yeah. How we got the street paid for the mikvah. How we got funding for Jewish organizations. How we ensured the right to burial according to Jewish law. This was all achieved. And the way that we worked was that we had key contacts in each shul or yeshiva and organization, and they would write a letter, which actually I helped them write for the most part, and very specific letters to their organization. It was Claire Schulman worked on our Eruv.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, an Eruv is a boundary that's an artificial or physical boundary that you can use to carry things on Shabbat and stuff like with Jewish law. But yeah, so that's what an Eruv is for those who don't know.
Okay, thank
you. Okay. And you also worked for the Queens Jewish Community Council, and you were the executive director over there. And you've told me many stories throughout my childhood. And what did the Queens Jewish Community Council do? Where did it serve? How did it serve the community?
It was an umbrella, and is an umbrella organization for over 100 Jewish institutions and organizations. So we strove to be the united voice of the Jewish community. That was a very important thing. We did, and it got more and more into social services, distributing food packages to the poor, especially around the Yom Tov, and helping people to apply for Medicaid, for other benefit programs that they might have been entitled to help tenants faced with eviction. To avoid eviction, sometimes meant finding them another more affordable place to live. So a lot of
And it wasn't just the Jewish community you served. You served anybody
anyone anyone who walked in was served. Certainly, the vast majority of the people who came in were Jewish, but anyone who walked in, we served. Now, in terms of other things, the Jewish Music Under the Stars concert series, which I actually started in Borough Hall, but then when I moved over to Queens Jewish Community Council, I ran them from there. So a lot of cultural events, the Queens Israeli festivals, and what some people seem to remember me for the best was Jewish Heritage Day for the New York Mets and the institution of kosher concessions at the ballpark. But really, the most significant thing in terms of advocacy that we did was that when school bus transportation for the yeshivas, that the city and the Board of Education wanted to increase the distance that people have to live from the school in order to get free school bus transportation. And it would have eliminated free transportation for most yeshiva students. A lot of the Jewish establishment organizations were not even, this was not even on their radar screen. And I actually organized a group of them to go to Carol Gresser, who was the president of the Board of Ed at the time. And what we said was that these families are paying taxes to support the public school system. They are getting no services, educational services for their tax dollars, except for these buses, and you want to take that away from them. And Carol Gresser said, no, I will not allow that to happen. And that cut did not go through. We saved the school bus transportation for the yeshivas, and I was very honored that Rav Moshe Sherer Zatzal, the head of the Aguda, actually gave me the credit for doing it.
Wow. Looking back, what's something that you're most proud of in your career besides the buses? Obviously, you've done a lot of greater things than that. What's one thing that you would, or a few things that you think you're really proud of?
Yeah, there are a number. I would say one of the most significant is the Bell Harbor Eruv. That basically we were working on the permits for the Eruv, and it usually went pretty smoothly. We went to various city agencies, and utilities got their permission to put up the Eruv rope or to use the telephone poles and so on. In Bell Harbor, we ran into opposition, from the Parks Department. There's a beach. Bell Harbor is on the Rockaway Peninsula, and there's a beach, and the plan was for for most of the length of the beach walls that are meant to protect from the sand from the beach from blowing onto people's lawns. Most of that, the beach walls themselves could be the Eruv. There was no need to do the wire. There were a few beach walls that were too short. So the plan was to raise the beach walls so that they would be at the level needed. When we went to the community board, they said, this is great. This is a civil improvement that the Eruv committee is going to pay for, and it's going to protect our property. The parks commissioner, a man by the name of Henry Stern, said that he could not allow that because it would be a step towards the privatization of the beach. And
But it wouldn't have to be any more than just a few feet. It doesn't have to be
right.
that tall. It's
No,
not like
it's not that tall at all. But he objected to the idea of a private entity working on repairing city property. That's basically what his objection was. And he said, put up poles along the boardwalk and string the rope.
Yeah.
So Rabbi Reiner said, hey, you want me to put up poles? I'll put up poles. So he puts up poles and a rope, and all the people who had their beautiful views of the Atlantic Ocean now found it blocked by Henry Stern's poles. And all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
And Claire Schulman, who's the deputy borough president at the time, calls Henry Stern and gives it to him. Do you know that you're starting a religious war? You better take down, those poles and
raise the wall,
raise the beach walls. So okay, the poles come down, but the opposition, some of them, once they had their chance to get the Jews, weren't giving up. And they actually sued the city. They carried around petitions that said that the Hasidim want to build an Eruv to make Bell Harbor a designated Jewish neighborhood. They're going to surround the neighborhood with barbed wire. And they want to do this so that they can drive to the beach on Saturday and litter it with beer cans.
They literally don't know what they're talking about.
So, yes. In any case, the important thing was that Donald Maness held firm, as did the local officials in Far Rockaway. But I was coordinating all of this, and the case eventually did go to court. And I worked with the lawyers for the city and for Kolpa, the Orthodox Jewish Legal Association, Dennis Rapps. Worked very closely with them, and we got a decision validating Eruvs under American law. And that decision is a precedent all over America. And even in the world. I, after that, got calls from Australia, from Great Britain even. Can you send us a copy of the decision?
Yeah. Wow.
So that probably is the most important contribution. I would say also the autopsy hotline, that the medical examiner was doing autopsies on people which are against Jewish law.
Yeah.
And Shelley Silver, who was the Speaker of the Assembly, he wasn't the Speaker yet. He sponsored a law that barred autopsies when there was a family objection, unless public safety or public health require it. Now, a law is great, but the question is, how is it implemented?
Yeah.
And the Queen's Medical Examiner's Office was just left and right doing autopsies.
Yeah, they were just doing what they wanted to do.
Right. And we called a meeting at Borough Hall. Donald Maness did not attend the meeting. Retroactively was probably because it involved autopsies, and his father had committed suicide. So it was a very painful subject for him.
Yeah.
So Nettie Meyerson, actually, the Assemblywoman, ran the meeting. And basically what Dr. Rowe, who was the medical examiner for Queens, said is, listen, I don't want every rabbi calling me to stop autopsies in the middle of the night. I want one person to be the central person.
Yeah.
That everybody calls him, and he should call me. And so I was the central person.
Yeah.
And I actually had a recording on our home phone, which you must have heard at times.
I did. I don't know. I remember.
Yeah, you were a small child at the time, so I don't think you'd remember it.
I don't remember.
But we had a recording, if this is an emergency with an autopsy. And it used to be I would at least once a week get a request from a rabbi, we have to stop this. And always did. There was
Yeah.
never a problem with it.
Yeah.
Then after a while, Dr. O says, "Can we go to lunch?" And I met him actually at Traditions Deli, which is where the Jewel Bagels is today.
Okay.
And
That place has gone through many
yes,
changes there over the years.
And he said, "Look, I see you're not going to let me get away with anything, so let's be friends." And I'll know. And after that, there were very few cases.
Yeah.
Everything was really handled straight between the funeral home and but we ensured the right to burial according to Jewish law in Queens, and was followed in the other boroughs as well.
So it's good that Jews have got a lot of connections in New York politics, and we can get favors from people. And even though we are a minority group of people, we still have a decent amount of influence. But since we have an upcoming a mayoral election happening, if Mamdani wins, does that change anything for Jews in New York City?
I think it's a bad sign for Jews in New York City. When I was riding to LaGuardia Airport the other day, there was a huge sign across the Grand Central Parkway, "Free Palestine."
Wow.
I'm not saying the city put it there,
Yeah.
but that the city tolerates it there.
Yeah, they tolerate. Yeah.
So I think that the fact that there's rhetoric coming out of the mayor's office like that, I think first of all, the symbolism of the city with the largest Jewish population in the world having a mayor whose reaction to the October 7th massacre essentially was to blame the Jews.
Or just to ignore the fact that it even happened at all, just dodge the question.
He issued a statement saying he mourns the tragic deaths of Israelis and Palestinians, and that the only way to peace is to end apartheid and occupation, which is a code word for eliminating Israel.
Yeah, basically.
So when you have somebody like that, the symbolism of somebody like that as mayor of the world's largest Jewish city is just something awful.
It's not good for Jews. It's not good for anybody, honestly, because we're living in the United States. It's a free country. People should be able to practice their religion, in peace and freedom, and they shouldn't, Jews shouldn't be attacked just because of Israel. If they're, if Israel's politics and their war, or whatever, it should not be wrapped up in the fact that Jews can't practice in New York, or should live in fear and of anti-Semitism and so on. I did watch something interesting, and they said that if all the other mayoral candidates drop out, and it's only Cuomo and Mamdani, that they say Cuomo will win against Mamdani. But that means everybody else has to drop out. Adams, Sliwa.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think Mamdani as mayor is going to try to close down the shuls or anything like that.
I don't think so.
I think it's more of a problem of his rhetoric, and that kind of rhetoric encourages certain behavior.
Yeah.
That certainly the only way that Cuomo could win is if Adams and Sliwa drop out. I don't think his winning would be a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be. But
I think that if Adams and Sliwa were to drop out, Mamdani would try to paint Cuomo as Trump's candidate, and that certainly is not to Cuomo's benefit.
Yeah.
So I think it would be even a one-on-one race would be very very, very difficult to win. Not impossible, and we certainly shouldn't give up.
Of course not. We can't give up. That leads us to the next thing, that why it's so important to vote, that we all should be registered to vote, and on election day vote, because every vote matters. And I'm sure that that there have been many votes for for district and whatever. I'm not the person to talk about politics. Izzy Peskowitz, our community advocacy director, is really the person who knows most about this. But I've heard personal stories of people losing elections just from a few dozen votes, and they weren't elected.
Well, Melinda Katz was elected district attorney in the primary by 16 votes.
Yeah.
So there's a perfect example. And what I often tell people, there are people who say, I give out leaflets in the street, I make phone calls, whatever, and most of the people hang up on me and so on. And I used to give this as the pep talk to my volunteers. I said, elections are decided, a close election is decided by one vote per precinct, one vote per election district.
Okay.
You're there to get that one vote in that election district.
Yeah.
That you stood there, if you stood there for 15 hours in the day and you got one vote that wouldn't have come out otherwise, that might not have voted in that race otherwise or whatever, or voted for someone because the nice yeshiva boy is standing there. If you got one vote in that election district, you did something significant.
Yeah.
And you may have helped you did something to turn this election around.
Yep.
So everyone should try to get out that one vote. It's all about grassroots. It's all about, and the most effective thing is, it's great if you can make phone calls, blind phone calls, or canvass door to door. That's all good. But the most effective thing you can do is talk to your family and friends. Yeah. Talk to the people in your shul. Talk to people in your WhatsApp groups and
go together to vote. Go as a group to vote.
Get across the importance of this. And people need to understand that the importance of voting in primaries, that very often the primary, certainly in New York City, is more important than the general election in terms of that really determines what's going to happen. And registering to vote in the primary does not require you to vote for that candidate in the general election. That's a common misconception. So one should, and you can switch every year. In other words, if I see there's an upcoming election with an important Democratic primary, I should register to vote as in the Democratic primary. If I see the next election, somebody in the Republican Party, there's a date you have to do it by.
Right.
But you could keep on switching. But the reality isn't that in New York City, the Democratic primary is the election. So perfectly all right, you should register for the Democratic primary usually, and then if you want to vote Republican in the general election, that's fine. And another thing is that we can't afford. We do have a problem with the Democratic Party, and it's not only people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and Mamdani. It's maybe even worse, somebody like Jerry Nadler, who is retiring, who gave the hechsher to Barack Obama's nuclear deal, who's led demonstrations again, and claims to be, he in fact did learn in yeshiva, and claims to be the representative of the Jewish community, and saying these things. And I'm glad that we'll be rid of him. But so we do have, and he's probably playing to the Democratic base. So we do have a problem there. The thing is, we can't afford to write off half the country. That we need bipartisan support for Israel and for the needs of the Jewish community. I can assure you of one thing. There will be future Democratic presidents. There will be future Democratic Congresses. There will be future Republican presidents and future Republican Congresses. And we cannot afford to be on the outs. We need to have friends on both sides. So rather than just write off the Democratic Party. We need to...
It needs a reformation.
Yeah, we need to support people like John Fetterman, like Richie Torres, like Grace Meng, like Jim Gennaro, that are supportive, very supportive of Israel and of Jewish concerns. And we have to be concerned about people in the Republican primary, like Tucker Carlson, party like Tucker Carlson, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, who border on being anti-Semitic.
If you would give advice to somebody involved in politics, an advocate, or even somebody running themselves, a young person, interested in getting into politics and eventually running for office, what advice would you give them? They don't have to be Jewish; they can be anybody.
I think get involved in the grassroots, build up name recognition, and form coalitions. That you can't rely. Queens is a very diverse place, and you can't rely on that the Jewish vote alone is going to get you in. That you have to make coalitions with other communities that share our values and that we can work with. And I would say that is probably the best advice.
Thank you, Abba, for coming. Thank you, Manny. And we want to thank all of our partners at Torah Anytime for supporting us, and all the podcast players that stream our program. And special thanks to Daily Giving, who support so many Jewish organizations for only $1 a day. You can support them, and you can support Chazaq. You can support all these Jewish organizations that are helping our people. And thank you for coming. Thank you.
It was
a
my
pleasure
pleasure
having you.